Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NXT The Game Season 3, Episode 21. We are going to get straight into the action. We have no pre-shows no pre-show matches tonight, so let's get straight into it. Alright, the camera catches Anderson and Gallows entering the arena. They'll explain what happened in NXT Takeover SoCal later tonight. NXT opens up with Mr. and Mrs. WWE in the ring as the cameraman turns on the fans in attendance. Mr. WWE says, NXT Universe, says Mr. WWE as the fans boo. You see what I have right here with me, he says, pointing to Mrs. WWE, who smiles through her mask. The fans boo as Mrs. WWE takes the microphone. And I can cash it in whenever I want on whoever I want. However, all of a sudden, the attention is turned to the stage as Manifest Destiny's Kevin Owens shows up with the NXT Women's Champion, Charlotte. Whenever you want, however you want, says Charlotte as she walks up to Mrs. WWE and taps on the NXT Women's and Money in the Bank briefcase. You got one thing right. When you try to cash it in, it'll be on me, because honestly, this championship is never leaving my waist again. Mrs. WWE steps up. Posture all you want, Charlotte, she says, tapping the briefcase, but it's only a matter of time. All of a sudden, Commissioner Regal's theme hits as he shows up on the ramp with a microphone in hand. It seems like you're all in a fighting spirit. You're all ready to fight. And I love that, he says, because Kevin, Charlotte, if you remember a few months ago when we had our first ever intergender tag team match here in NXT, when you and Charlotte took on Bayley and Sami Zayn, the fans cheer. And let me guess, says Kevin Owens, it's going to be me and Charlotte versus Mr. and Mrs. WWE here on NXT, says Kevin Owens, mocking William Regal. Mr. WWE nods, annoyed, just like Owens. William Regal says, well, yes, says William Regal. Shocker, says Kevin Owens arrogantly. Tonight it will be Mr. and Mrs. WWE versus Kevin Owens and Charlotte of Manifest Destiny, says William Regal as a fan here, versus Bayley and Sami Zayn, which catches everybody's attention, versus Sasha Banks and Samoa Joe, with the winning team being allowed to choose a championship shot of their choice. Tonight's main event, it's going to be awesome, says William Regal, to steal a phrase from The Miz. William Regal leaves, having shocked the NXT Universe. Corey Graves says, did you hear that, Renee? Mr. and Mrs. WWE versus Kevin Owens and Charlotte versus Sami Zayn and Bayley versus Samoa Joe and Sasha Banks tonight, the main event. Renee Young, this has to be one of the biggest matches made in NXT history, Corey. So many options. Who will get a shot? Joe or Sasha? A rematch for Bayley? A rematch for Mr. WWE? Mrs. WWE already has a briefcase, so surely he would get the shot. Owens could finally, first time ever, get a shot at the NXT Heavyweight Championship. NXT is going to be off the hook tonight, Renee. We fade away with the entire universe of buzz into the ring for the opening match. In the match, has some good action and average heat. Hideo Itami defeats Johnny Gargano in 10 minutes with the double diving foot stomp. Hideo Itami with the victory over the NXT Light Heavyweight Champion in a non-title match. We now go backstage and see Manifest Destiny, Kevin Owens, Charlotte, Big Cass, and Carmella talking about the huge main event match tonight and the implications it has. We then shift to Sasha Banks and Samoa Joe backstage talking about the match, and both of them agreeing that they will cross the bridge about which of them gets the title shot tonight after they win the match. Alright, next the camera shows us Tom Phillips as he's backstage with the brand new NXT Tag Team Champions, Anderson and Gallows. Tom Phillips, I'm here with Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, he says to the camera, and straight to the point, gentlemen. Not only did Carl debut last month at NXT Takeover SoCal, helping you break up the former Balor Club, Luke, but you both also goaded American Alpha into a Tag Team Championship match, which you won. Tom was going to continue, but Carl Anderson cut him off. Leave, stupid, says Anderson to Tom Phillips. Gallows then shoves Phillips out of the picture. What me and Big Luke did was nothing compared to what we're going to do to the NXT roster. We aren't just a tag team. We are the tag team here at NXT. Anderson puts his hands up like a gun and shoots the cameraman. You're all on notice. Anderson and Gallows leave, not really answering why they did what they did, but rather that they're here to dominate. We will have to dig deeper later at a later time to see exactly what Anderson and Gallows' agenda really here is in NXT. In the match, that's some solid, good in-ring action, but not in the which way of heat. American Alpha defeats Blake and Murphy in 8 minutes when Gable defeats Murphy via pinfall with the Alpha. So two teams who have faced off quite a few times here in NXT face off again with a fantastic match. American Alpha, Chad Gable and Jason Jordan defeat Blake and Murphy. Alright, now we fade backstage. We see Mr. and Mrs. WWE backstage, and they're talking about if they win, how Mr. WWE could get another shot at Sami Zayn and the NXT Heavyweight Championship since Mrs. WWE already has a briefcase. We then fade backstage as we see Sami Zayn and Bayley talking about the huge main event match tonight and how if they win, Bayley can get a rematch against Charlotte for the NXT Women's Championship. Sami and Bayley look ready to go. We're reminded that next week on NXT, we are going to see Neville take on The Miz in the main event. However, in this week's main event, in a bout that featured great action and average heat, Kevin Owens and Charlotte defeat Sami Zayn and Bayley, Sasha Banks and Samoa Joe, and Mr. and Mrs. WWE in 21 minutes when Charlotte defeats Sasha Banks by pinfall. Sasha Banks and Samoa Joe have no chemistry. That's okay. So Kevin Owens and Charlotte get the victory here tonight in the main event, which was a huge main event match. After the match, Charlotte drops to her knees and Kevin Owens runs up to her and picks her up into the air, hugging her, and the two fall down into the ring together, as we all know what this means. Kevin Owens has been held away from the championship by William Regal for a long time, but no longer. The camera focuses on Sami Zayn, who's on the ground in the corner, and slowly stands up as Kevin Owens begins to slowly walk over to Sami Zayn, and Charlotte is handed her NXT Women's Championship. She puts it on her shoulder, only to get back down in front of Kevin Owens and mock Sami Zayn, letting the world know that with her hands in the title belt motion around his waist, that Kevin Owens will be taking on Sami Zayn. It's official. We've held it off, folks, for 2.5 seasons. At NXT Takeover New Year, at the next NXT Takeover special, which is NXT New Year's, we're going to see Manifest Destiny's leader, the man who's beaten Triple H at back-to-back Legacy Takeover specials, which is our pay-per-view, which is our WrestleMania, Kevin Owens face Sami Zayn for the NXT Heavyweight Championship. The show ends with Zayn and Owens face-to-face. This should be a pretty good show. I'm interested here. This was a good show. And this was NXT The Game Season 3, Episode 21. I'm very excited. I've held it off, guys. Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. It's going down for real. Thank you for watching, and we will be coming back with Season 3, Episode 22 in just a couple hours. Or a couple days, excuse me.